So okay. So in today's session, we're going to cover a couple of topics, and specifically regarding to the invoice billing cycle process. And that's going to be very similar to what you have seen format-wise from auto-fueling, but it's going to have a slightly different look and feel, and some more options to customize the look of that format. So from here, one of the things I want to do is start reviewing some of the setup first, and then compare it to the formatting. So in our prior training session, we talked about customer account settings and some of those options that could be tailored. And if we open up one of these records here, we'll actually see a whole section of setup on a card fueling account that is dedicated just to controlling the invoice formatting. So we went to card fueling, card accounts, and filtered on a customer. And then you'll see here in this invoice format section, the values. So I'm going to put this in a corner so that we can see that. And then I'm going to run the card fueling invoice, or we'll minimize it. So from here, under card fueling, you will do this invoice process per billing cycle. So the invoice has the option of embedding a statement, just like you had with auto fueling, or has the ability of not including a statement, depending on what you want to do. But we'll have, so as we look at this invoice, it is a multi-step process that allows you to generate, preview, email, and then finally update the billing cycle. And so as we're running through these examples, I'll be tailoring some of the formats so you can see different examples, what they look like on the printed version versus exactly how to generate. So I'll start with the most common way to generate. So if we were doing a monthly cycle, we would set up our dates for the ending period of the cycle, capture transactions through a certain date, and then we would actually be able to pull in different cycles to filter. So if we have a monthly billing cycle, and then we can also include a statement remittance page and put in a balance forward. So if we knew that we were doing monthly and the balance forward for monthly statements was October 31st, this would automatically calculate what their balance forward was and show activity after October 31st for this month. So as we're doing this process on the criteria, you do have some additional options that could be used to filter, or it can be used for reprinting. So this same screen is used for generating a new invoice. It's also, if you see some of the options down here, it can be used for reprinting a specific invoice that occurred in the past, or it can be used to generate broader reports and including previously printed transactions for like a quarterly report. Somebody might want to know if the fuel expense tracking. So because of that, it has multiple ways it can be ran. And then we also have the option of fee calculation frequency. So if you are charging any fees to customers, like a statement fee or transaction fees when they go to remote locations, you can toggle on whether or not you're charging monthly fees or a fee per billing cycle or an annual fee. And these fees are actually tied back here to the customer's account, to their profile. So if you weren't doing any fees in auto fueling, then you can ignore that and you don't need to, but that's something to pay attention to, that you may need to toggle the frequency, and that's something that again, as we're working with customers, we'll be helping them in practice and in their first couple of invoice cycles to make sure everything is going smoothly. So typically the next step would be to run this report, and while running the report, one of the challenges I'm going to have is this is on a demo database and I don't have a lot of fresh data coming in. So I'm actually going to adjust a couple of settings and do it more like a reprint as opposed. So if I start with a customer for City of Fort Wayne, and so this is the customer I've got on the left, so we'll see these invoice formatting options, exactly how they control and correspond to the printed format. And then in this case, I haven't been consistently printing invoices, so I'm just going to reprint all possible transactions for City of Fort Wayne, just to get some data here. And then I'll generate it once without the remittance page. I'll generate it again with it, just again back and forth on the different options. So the first step after you've put in your parameters is clicking Run. Run will then go out, gather all the transactions that meet the criteria of the parameters, and return a result of all the customers who are ready to get an invoice. As we're looking at these options here, and granted this is just a single customer, but there's a couple of buttons across the top. And the first one is for refresh. So if you accidentally closed out of this session in the middle of an invoice process and you wanted to continue where you left off, you would be able to, you notice you get a warning if you try and close the screen, but you can go to invoice, and then if you just hit refresh, that'll take you right back to where you were based on what parameters had been set when they were ran the first time. The next button is print, and so you've got some options here. You can print every document here, and that's a good way of previewing the data, is to do a print all. You can also exclude emails or emails only. This gives you the option that typically if you were emailing somebody a statement or a billing cycle invoice, you may not want to print the hard copy out too. But you may want to print a hard copy out for your own purposes. So this print exclude emails is meant to give you any customer who has an invoice that's set up to automatically be emailed to them. We are not going to print a copy to them. Instead, they'll get the next step, which is email all invoices. In the process of emailing, we're looking for specific setup on the customer. So I'm going to bring open the sales customer screen here, and then I'll show you those email configuration settings. So within a customer, we set up customer contacts, and then those customer contacts is where we have the email parameter set up. So that means that you could actually set up multiple contacts. So we see here there is 5 contacts on this account. We've got 4 of them have email addresses, but only one of them is actually getting the invoices and statements. This other additional user here, you can see their email distribution is empty. So if we were to open this up and add some options here, you can maintain this contact information and add different options to this email distribution. So the card fueling invoices get a specific format that looks for this. This is what allows you to get, customers. Some contacts can get an invoice. Some contacts may get a quote. Some may get, ACH notification. Just depends on the organization, and if they have multiple people, they should get different types of documents. So each time one of those contacts can be set up and tailored to a specific type of email distribution. So from here, we can see now this user is set up for the CF invoice to distribute it. And this would allow us, when we went to this email invoice option, it would send an email to every customer in the list who has an email address and a distribution set up for the CF invoice. And the CF is just card fueling abbreviated. We can also set up email templates. And these templates allow you to, on those emails, define certain introductions, header information, or footer information that can be included as part of the email that will be distributed. So think about this as a, thank you for your business. And see attached documents. And then we'll attach a PDF copy of their invoice. So from here, if we were, so typically I recommend, after run, we would print, that would give us the option to preview, look for any spot check any information before it's finalized. And then email would be sending out, formal final copies to the customers. And then update AR is the final step in this process. Update AR actually consolidates all of the individual card fueling transactions that are imported in every day into a final consolidated AR invoice. And one of the benefits of why we send all the individual charges to AR and then summarize it into a single invoice is, if you were monitoring for customers over the credit limit, you would actually be able to see their future AR for anything that was unbilled. And then, so this update AR, prior to this step, you can rerun, toggle, change criteria, parameters, and everything else up to the update AR. Since this was a reprint I'm working on, the actual updated AR is a step that we're not going to be doing at this time because it had been done previously. There's also, in addition to the buttons at the top for print and email, these are meant for all. The two buttons down below, the littler ones, this is for emailing the selected record or printed. So you can imagine if you had, a dozen or 50 customers in this list, that, if one of them had a bad email and you wanted to just re-email just an individual one, that's something you could be doing just by selecting and emailing an individual, or selecting and printing instead of seeing all of them. Here we can see a previewed copy of this invoice. And so as many customers are using auto fueling, quite a few of them I've noticed are also using the envelopes and statements that are pre-printed or with a preparation. So the envelopes and the statements are 100% compatible with I-21. So if you've been using that in the past and you want to continue to use that, you don't need to do any changes. However, there are some additional options that are available, such as we can embed logos into this document and be able to print. You can see in this top left-hand corner here, we have the ability to put your own company logo and display that. And then this run, the first run I'm doing here, was actually without a remittance page. So I'll regenerate this with a remittance page to be able to show some of the differences. And that remittance page does have the tear-off stub for the statement in AR activity. So we'll generate this a couple of times with the different criteria, different formatting options. But what I really want to highlight now is a comparison between the formatting and the settings on the account. So we can see here on this invoice formatting section for the City of Fort Wayne's account, they are part of the weekly invoice cycle. Their primary sort order is by card. And then they have no secondary sort order, so it's going to sort by date. Within these drop downs, you have some different options. You can sort by card or by vehicle card. Uh, if somebody is using a dual card system where they've got driver pens and vehicle cards out in the field. And then you can also sort it by miscellaneous. You also have options on remittance if you want to include addresses or just an abbreviation. Those are some of the formats that can be completed with minimal information here, depending on how many rows of data you want to see. So this primary sort order, the first field here, doing it by card order, that actually pertains to this very first section here. When it's card order, it's going to put the card as a header to this section, list all of the detail related to that card below, and then do a subtotal for that card. So here you can see there was 4 transactions on various dates, and we're actually hiding the time. So you have the option here to toggle on print time on invoice. And if we rerun with the print time on invoice, you'll actually see the time that goes with it. If they also had a vehicle information related to that transaction, it would show up here, as well as odometer readings, mile per gallon calculations if odometer is provided, the product they bought, quantity. This is a gross price with all applicable taxes and an extended total. As we look through this report and see this first primary sort order, there's going to be this type of section is repeated for each unique card with activity. So there's the next card, here's the next card after that. And you can keep going through and sort through multiple pages until you notice at the end of those pages, we start getting into a total section. So these total by card option is the same thing as this summary by card. So each one of these checkboxes here, we can actually choose to do summaries, group by department, summary by department, or any combinations of department card product or department vehicle product or summary. So you can see here these different, a summary by card, a summary by vehicle. So here's the summary by card. It basically takes all of the activity above and grand total puts in the card description, and then this gives you the tax breakdown to go with that. You can also see total by product. This will give a breakdown by state, by product, and again, the same tax breakdown. So that's very common for this one to be turned on so they can do their IFTA tax reporting depending on how much taxes they paid for trucking companies in each state they might have filled up at. And then continuing, there's a total by department that matches with these checkboxes. And then a total by vehicle. So there are multiple checkboxes if I end up turning on all of them. I'll add a department grouping. We can just see some additional differences here. So as I save these settings, I do need to regenerate or rerun the invoice to get those settings to take effect. So I'm going to reprint all transactions, and I'm going to rerun this again just with the card detail, and then I'll run it again with a front remittance page to that. And I see here this is generating. I did miss one option here for a site address that I want to talk about. I'm going to turn that one on as well. We'll have to do another regenerate to show what that site address looks like. But if you recall, this was roughly a 3-page report, but because we've added so many additional totals and groupings, um, so one of the things I did was included a department grouping. So now this invoice will start with the department for garbage, and it will be putting all of the transactions within that department. So all of the cards that are associated to the garbage department will show first, and then we'll get there's another total for the police department. We'll get another total for the street department. And you can see that department grouping just puts a wrapper around the departments. And just each one of these departments can be set up by account and then can be associated to their cards. So you can see here that, here's the cards that are associated to the garbage department or street or police, etc. And then once we've gotten through some of the department grouping sections, now we're to the total section. So you can see here where I've added on additional sections for miscellaneous, and this particular customer did not use a miscellaneous breakdown, so everything was lumped together. And then we're seeing totals by card and by product. So this is a little bit more detailed, right? So there's the subsection of department, and then the card, and then the items that they buy underneath that. So they got regular gasoline, they got an E10 gasoline. And then that's grand totaling at the department level. Same thing with a total by card by product. So I know some of these becomes redundant, right? It's the best way to understand this and play with it is to, when you're practicing with the system, take some customers that have a lot of activity, and then you can just practice turning on or off any one of these individual settings and seeing what they do. Most of them will either add a new section or take a section away. I'm going to regenerate one more time with the address option. And then from here, if we rerun this, so I had made a change to, before it was set to don't print any site addresses, it was just printing an abbreviated site number and description. Now it's going to print a full address if that's available in the database, which thankfully PackPride sends us a full record every time. Full site address. I will put a little disclaimer on that. That is subject to change with the CFN format when it goes to the participant file. Once the controller sunsets, that the actual, they provide much less site address information in the PT file than they do in the locbill file. So that means that we're going to have a handful of customers or information where you may need to be maintaining sites. They'll be added automatically, but you may need to look up the rest of the name and address for them to print on the report itself. So in a moment, this report will be done generating, and then I'll show you what that print site address option looks like on the invoice. It does create an additional line, and that's why some customers prefer to not always include the site address all the time. They can save some paper if it's a customer with a lot of activity. Are there any questions so far while this is generating? Oh, I see. I missed some questions while I was talking. All right, from Erica. So Erica's question was, is there a department or vehicle summary option that can be emailed separately to someone who receives the invoice. Currently, all of the sections get embedded into a single PDF. They're not separated into different documents. So that means that the actual user is going to be less likely to get each one of those options separately as a separate report. But you could set up multiple users to get copies of it, and they can go straight to the end of the report or search the PDF for that section as opposed to. And then the additional question from Erica, is there a character limit? There is not a character limit, but there is an option to be able to print. It will wrap text in I-21. So when I'm looking at these departments, there's not a physical limit to the department. You can put as long as you want, but the longer descriptions will wrap on the actual invoice itself. Okay, so this example, I'm going to actually fix some of my setup here as well, and this will coincide. So you can see now the additional address line that prints here. And this site ABC looks like it has no address. So if I go to card fueling to set up, one second, I'm waiting for that to load for me. Okay, so in card fueling, on this setup menu, we can go into the network tab, open the network tab, and then there will be a list of sites that are available. And so on this site ABC, you'll notice it has a full address here. And from there, if I've got that updated, now I can maintain that information and actually rerun my invoice one more time with the new information. To look a little bit better with an actual address to show up on the printed document. Yeah, so now you can see the initial line includes site number and an abbreviation. There is some truncation on that to make sure we don't lose. And then here on the secondary line, you can get the full address to print. And then also I had re-enabled the time, but I don't think I had highlighted that. So here you can see the date it occurs and the time of the transaction. And that will be in military time. So if it's afternoon, it's going to be a 13 for 1 p.m. or versus a 1 a.m. That was more to conserve as much space as possible because we want to get as much useful information to the end user. The last parameter I want to show here is actually this remittance page. And this option is what gives you the statement with the remittance section. So I'm going to rerun this report with the additional remittance page. And here from the remittance page, you can actually see the customer information. There will be a continuation of the remittance page at the beginning. So as a statement cover page with a information on the terms, the balance that's owed the customer, in the detach here. So this would be where your remittance perforation would coincide. And then we also have, if they had any additional AR balances, this customer actually, other than the card fueling invoice we're about to generate, doesn't have any formal balances due. So this becomes a cover statement to that document. And then you can also put regular recurring messages on those statements. So I'll show that part of it too, just to tie it all together. So here under common info, we have the ability to do report messages. And report messages can be for different types of documents. In this case, it's actually looking for a statement. So we can put this on a statement and create our own footer message, and then put in some additional text or verbiage. Right, so you can customize any type of message that you want to go out on that statement. And you can actually make these messages global. So this customer is blank, that means it applies to all customers. Or you could actually customize them and say this particular customer is going to get a very unique special message just for them. And that would just be a matter of duplicating the standard message, saving that to a new customer, and then customizing the message you want for that customer. And then that comment would print here. For the information, I know I've gone through a lot of material pretty quickly, but that was really the intent of what I was hoping to cover. Our next session will be more about reporting payments and any other regular processes you might do outside of in the receivables area. So are there questions or comments about the format, what we've done so far? I know this is something that we want you to be playing around with as part of your testing, to be able to reprint invoices or print them from conversion and see how they compare.
Brian?
Yes.
What about prompt pay discount?
Prompt pay discounts would show up on there. This
Okay.
customer does not have one, but it does show up as a section here. Let me see if I can toggle this customer on for prompt pay discounts briefly, and then I'll regenerate for you. Yeah, you don't ever want to give discounts to government officials. So here, this customer set up the no discount, but let's say I change it to, you might have a different discount schedule. In auto fueling, this is slightly different. They combine the discount schedule and the invoice cycle into one cycle. We actually have that as two separate options. So you can have a different invoice cycle for the time frame when you generate it, in a different discount schedule depending on the amount of volumes the customer needs. But if I turn that on there and go back to rerun this again. So when those discounts are turned on, you'll see additional information in the remittance stub, in the body of the statement, and actually on the last page of the invoice, showing where any potential discount might have been available to them. So like in this, of course, I would pick one that they are eligible for discounts, but they didn't actually earn them because they had to buy more than 1,000 gallons to start earning a penny. So this one, you can see here, the eligible gallons was lower, but that gives you an idea of what it would look like differently on the prompt pay discounts and how they would show up. Does that answer your question there, Greg?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions related to running the billing process in I-21? So